growth, success of an entrepreneur.
We've raised the bar.
Learn firsthand from successful business owners and create your own path to success.
I'm going to show you how great I am.
It's time to hit the road to growth with team lead of the Enriquez Group, Realtor Vinny.
Hi, Realtor Growth listeners. Today I have Elena Armijo. Did I say that right? Armijo?
You did. You got it.
Perfect, man. Wow. All the Spanish classes are really paying off for me.
Yeah.
All right. So you were an ex-opera singer, turned professional certified coach. We have a coach on here. I'm gonna start getting the alarm every time I have a coach on here. I had a good amount of coaches, and one of the things I always ask all the coaches is what separates you from all the other coaches out there?
Oh, that's so good. Well, first of all, thanks for having so many coaches and supporting the coaching industry. Shout out to you helping us along. And what separates me is my creative background. I mean, literally what you said. I was an opera singer who is now coaching in executive spaces, and like, who would have thought that would ever happen? It's a big pivot.
I mean, the opera singer avenue and coach seem very different. I mean, when I imagine an opera singer, I'm thinking of a person up there, solo person up there, singing, using their vocal cords to do it. Coach, helping someone else, I guess, get to their peak performance. I mean, did you always have a plan to transition into that role as a coach?
No, not at all. It took me by surprise. So you're right. I mean, I think where it started was, I remember the moment that I was on stage with Syracuse Opera, and I was singing Stefano, which is a role in Romeo and Juliet. And I came off stage after taking a bow, and I was like, okay, that was fun. It's another performance that I'd done in a series of I'd been on the road 4 years for 10 months out of the year straight. So two months at a time, I would go back to New York and repack a bag to go on the road. So this was my lifestyle for a long time. And after that performance, I remember going home in the snow because it was Syracuse. And for a girl from New Mexico, that snow is pretty intense. And went to this artist apartment, and I'd forgotten to get groceries, I think, before the performance. I'd missed my brother's birthday party again. And I think I was on my third failed relationship at that point. So stuff wasn't working, basically, and I was unhappy. So I hired a coach myself to figure out what was going on, because by all means, I had, all the success that I'd wanted and worked my whole life for, and I was lonely and guilty about my success. So I worked on myself for a good 6 months, and I came to find out that everything I'd created as an entrepreneur at that point, right? Because, as a singer, you are a small business that you've been working your whole life to build. And I realized that I'd done it from a point of proving my worth and my value in the world, which came from childhood. My parents were both lovely, amazing people, and I would say they're both workaholics in some ways. They didn't intend to teach me that, but I think my kid brain walked away making it mean that I needed to work, 60 hours a week or plus to be safe, loved, and successful. So that's what I did. And I never intended music to be a business. I always loved music from a passion. I think my degree is in education, so I always intended to be like a music school teacher. And I just kept saying yes to the money and to the opportunities, which on one hand, is a really good thing because it led me to where I am today, saying yes to opportunities. But I also got to really take some time to figure out what I wanted to do. So when I worked with my coach, I fell in love with coaching. And coaching had never been on my radar. I don't think I even believed in it at the time. I thought it was a crock. And I realized that I'd never found something that I loved as much as I loved music. And these things were same plane. So I went to a program, I got certified, I built a business, and that was 8 years ago. And here I am.
Let's jump back. So you talked about that you had a coach, and then that coach kind of helped you self-realize. Was it a singing coach for opera? Was it a life coach or life coach?
Yeah, it was like a life coach / business coach, but more life coach, I would say. Yeah.
When you were building out your brand as an opera singer, was it gig to gig? Was it set routine, or what was it? What did that look like financially?
Oh, it's very much gig to gig. So the way the opera world works is it did. I mean, it's changed now a little bit with COVID, right? But the way it worked is you would do like 40 auditions at the beginning of your year for the following year. So
Oh, wow.
so everything is set up a year in advance, and it's very much contract to contract. So for every 40 gigs I did, I think I won maybe 10 to 12 contracts. So you knew ahead of time what your year was going to look like, which also meant you knew how much money you were going to make, which was, in the opera world, I was doing okay. I was basically making ends meet. I wouldn't say that I was doing fantastic, right? And I could see what I needed to do to be fantastic and financially. And I don't think I was really willing to go there, with what it was going to require. So
What's it going to require?
I think it was going to require that lifestyle a lot, and I was going to need to totally redefine how I related to it, which I didn't know at the time, right? So if I had it to do over again now, I might have created it completely differently. And I think, some days I think about going back and redoing it with all the mindset work that I have now. It would probably look a lot different, and I'd empower it differently. But it definitely was going to require being on the road all the time, still missing out on some things, because when you have a contract, you have a contract. If you don't sing, you don't get paid.
Well, let's go back to the idea, I guess, talking about mindset, right? So how would have your mindset, the way you look at things now compared to you looking at things then, change the perception of being on the road all the time, not being around, I guess, family? How would that have changed?
I think what would have changed to start with is I wouldn't say yes to things that I didn't want. Right. So I was saying yes to a lot of things that I didn't necessarily believe in or agree with. So I would have cut that out right away. And I would have only chosen to work with people that I really respected or admired, instead of, again, that scarcity mentality of I got to just take everything that I can. So those two things would change immediately. And I probably would make some agreements with myself. Like I wouldn't take a contract unless it was over a certain dollar amount. Or I would only take a certain amount of contracts per year and be a demand that I actually take rest and travel breaks. And, if there were 2 or 3 things that are really important in my year, like a wedding to go to or something of that nature, those would be non-negotiable for me anymore. Whereas before it was sort of that hungry mindset where it was like, nah, I can't do that because that won't lead me to my career.
And then, so you're going through this path, trying to get what you can get and grow your brand.
Yep.
And when did the idea of getting a coach come along?
When I was broken down and lonely. So I would describe that, in the executive world or the corporate world, we call that burnout. I was burnt out. Like I was at my max capacity because I wasn't taking care of myself. And again, I was living, from a scarcity mentality.
And then how did you come across that coach you decided to work with?
It's kind of interesting. I went for a facial one day in New York because I was at my wit's end. And I literally was like, I think I need some sort of self-care, which was not, common for me to do that. So I think I was so broken down that I just needed some sort of like physical touch. So I went for a facial. And this woman who was giving me a facial said, I know the perfect person that you should work with. And I thought, well, that seems weird, but I could at least, trust the universe and that we are here together having this conversation for that reason. So I took her up on her offer to contact the person and ended up working with them for about 6 months.
And then we're working with that person. Did you go to another person before you actually started your path to coaching, or was that the person that
I think I stopped with her for a while. And then a good friend of mine, another opera singer we'd been exchanging all this information because she was making such a difference in my life. Yeah. My friend worked with her as well. And then my friend joined a coach training program. So she told me about the coach training program that I joined. And she was like, listen, this has changed my life. You've got to do this. And I sort of was still very skeptical. Again, like, I don't know. It doesn't seem like a thing I need to do. But I watched her through that year transform her whole world through working that intensively in the coach training program. And so after that year, I thought, well, I've spent all this time and money on a career for 22 plus years. Why don't I try this and see, like, what's this one more thing, to try if I've already done all this other stuff. And that was the year that I pivoted.
So working with that coach for 6 months and then separating, what happened with that separation, not going forward? What stopped there? What happened there?
Yeah, I don't think there's anything bad that happened. I think that, with coaching as an industry, the thing to remember is coaching isn't ever meant to be something that you do long term. I think some of us can stay with our therapists for many, many years and come and go. And coaching is sort of like project based. So you come in and you do the work that you have scheduled to do with your coach, and then you might complete for a while. And maybe you come back when there's another project. So I feel like in that 6 months that I worked with my coach then, I had done the work I came to do, which was like figure out why my life was falling apart, figure out why I held so much guilt and loneliness on the road, and also some actual healing work from the burnout. And it took about 6 months, but I was feeling like I was in a much better place after that. So we completed naturally, I would say.
And then when you completed there, you're still in the opera world, correct?
Yep. I was still in the opera world, but I was very certain that I needed to find something else for myself because I was certain I didn't want to go back to the way I was doing it. We'd cleared all that out, right?
Yep.
And so this program came up and I thought, okay, I just did amazing work for 6 months with a coach. What if I can do really amazing work with an in-depth coaching program for a year? I think that was really the hook that got me in, not I wanted to be a coach. Because even when I did the coach training program, I was there like, I'm here to fix myself. I have no interest in being a coach. I didn't really fall in love with coaching until like month 4 of the year-long coach training program. So I definitely joined to continue doing that work just at a deeper level.
Do you remember what happened in month 4 that made you fall in love with coaching?
Yes, I remember the moment. It was realizing that coaching, I loved being in a room full of people that wanted to be in transformative conversations. Like I loved being in a room full of people that were committed to change and growth and excellence. Were also committed to unpacking stories and limiting beliefs for themselves. And then going out and doing that in the world. Like I didn't even really know that was possible. And even when I started, I thought, I don't think you can make a career out of this. And here I am, with a 6-figure business, getting ready to launch an agency, and we'll probably gross $1 million in revenue in the next year and a half, right? So having this be a business was completely off my radar, but I loved the impact. I loved the partnership with people, and I think that's what I fell in love with first.
So you fall in love with it. You find that partnership. Now it's about building your kind of own brand. I know you already built a brand with your opera singing, yet this is a little bit different, I would say.
Totally different, right? Imagine that pivot as you're building.
Yeah. So what did that look like with the company? Did they kind of walk you through of how to build your brand, how to kind of grow it, or?
Yeah, they help a lot with that. I mean, the coach training program I joined, luckily, they are very good about building blocks along the way as you're going through it. But I really, I think the work that I had to do personally was tie what are my strengths as a coach and as a singer that are parallel, and what can I bring to both worlds? And so that's really where I started with my brand.
And so you started that. What did you come to realize that you could bring, from that?
Well, it's funny. I realized pretty quickly when I got in front of executives or people, and I pretty much started out in finance before I branched into like tech or startups or government work. And so I remember being in a room full of, they were kind of like senior managing directors, in a financial firm that for the first time. And I remember thinking, oh, I get it. I get why I have power here, because I am coming from a world that structurally is built the same way as the corporate world. There's hierarchy, there's leadership, there's team culture, there's everything in the opera world that is the same in the corporate world. The only difference is there's no creative mindset happening in the corporate world, at least to what I was seeing, right? So I was the person that could come in and bring the creative side of my brain to rooms that they'd forgotten that exists in them as humans. And I was bold because I didn't have anything to lose, right? Like I wasn't attached to the financial sector. I wasn't attached to private equity. Like, to me, it was actually a strength in my job to not know much about your business, because then I'm actually looking at the things that are your blind spots, because I'm not in the weeds with you on your business, right?
How would you get those initial opportunities? If I mean, I've had a variety of different coaches on here, and one of the common themes I get is when someone's saying, well, how do you hire a coach, or who do you hire a coach? You go find someone that's been down the road that you want to go down. Right. And so, and you've looked at a similar road, right? Yet it's different.
Yeah, I don't know that I really agree with that mindset, honestly. And here's why. Because just like I said, I think you bring more power as a coach if you know nothing about the business, kind of, because you can be objective and non-biased, right? And our whole job as coaches is to listen for context and what stories people are saying without getting on the same side of the street with them. So to your point, how did I build? Well, it's not easy, right? I do feel like our business is you can build it with sales funnels and marketing techniques and all of that. That is one way. And the way that I chose to build it was from organic marketing. So literally it was getting those first 5 or 10 clients, and then the work works. So from there, referrals start happening. And to this day, I say my business is built in referrals and relationship capital. That is the only way my business runs right now. So I remember my first client coaching for a cup of coffee for $5, saying like, buy me a cup of coffee and I'll coach you. So I did start, a little scrappy, and eventually worked my way into those rooms. I definitely didn't start with my first client, in a C-suite room. But I think that, to me, I trusted that the actual coaching works in any room.
So over time you started with a cup of coffee for the coaching, for 5 minutes coaching, right? And assumption over time, your cost is a lot more than a cup of coffee now, right?
Yes.
As you're growing as a coach, how do you start understanding and realigning your pricing to fit your clientele, fit the value that you bring? How did you adapt to that?
Yeah. Well, there's a couple ways. I mean, when I'm working, so I train coaches too. So I stayed with that same company for about 7 years and trained new coaches coming into the business. So this is a common conversation that I have with new coaches is, how do you set your pricing and what do you do? Where I'm always going to point people back to is, look, we're teaching people or coaching people, not teaching, coaching, to live the life that you want on your terms. So that means you got to be practicing what you preach. So you got to start from a place of, what do you need to be sourced and at the best of your ability to make your life work, to be able to show up for your business? So that's kind of where I start the conversation, is from the drawing board. Like, what do I need to have my expenses paid? What do I need to have time off with? What do I need to create a home that feels like I can be in a room all day and coach people and be sourced, right? And we build from there, so that your rates are based on your life and what you want, and not your value as a coach, because the work doesn't change, right? The work is the work. And really my job as a coach is to let you do the work as a client. You're the one actually doing the work, and I'm there to support you and holding you accountable and reminding you when there's blind spots or pivots in the road coming up to watch out for. But really the client is the one that does the work. So my business is set on not only what I need to be successful in the world and to keep showing up for you, but then also what do my people need to be sourced, right, as a team around me. So that's sort of how I believe in building it.
So let me correct me if I'm wrong. You said it's not necessarily about what the value you bring, but the amount of money you need.
Yeah, to make your life and your business work, right? And then at a certain so just to be super transparent, I have different ways that I've built my business, right? I have top tier pricing, right? Which is the amount of clients that I'm going to take at full rate, that I'm in with you. We have a certain amount of hours we meet. There might be some more direct support in what you're building in a long-term project. Then I have a middle section of my business, which is more for like coaches that are training and coming up and need support. And then I have a pro bono section of my business, which is all about sliding scales and people that I believe in helping from a value standpoint and an impact standpoint in the world. So that's how the model is actually built. But again, it's all built on my value system and what I want as a business owner.
So let's say we're talking to other coaches that are listening right now, and they have, and I know you built your platform up and it readjusted as you kind of grew and expanded. It's someone listening right now, right? Let's say they only have X amount of clients, right? But the cost that they need to survive is this much right here. Is it, they can't, I mean, maybe they can charge more because they have less clients, and then as they get more clients, charge less, or they keep them the same price because now the amount that they're looking to accomplish could be completed by more people. Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally. I think, I don't know that it's that linear. I mean, the first thing I'd say is, are you undercharging? Most coaches are probably undercharging, is what I would say. So let's talk about like, what is the market rate, but also what are the stops for you as a coach in owning that there's a certain dollar point you need per hour. Remember, your time is money. So what is your time worth to you? Which is a values-based conversation, right? It's not really the coaching is worth this. It's what are you worth for yourself? And then, you're going to reach a level where eventually you can't charge $50,000 for an hour, right? For coaching, right? So you get to determine what your top rate is for you and what that means for your business. And what does that look like? And I really think anybody can create it any way you want. I wouldn't say go backwards ever. I would say build in stages to, again, what is your top rate going to be and why? That's the biggest question, is why. And are you making your top rate, $1,000 an hour because you feel like that will keep you as an elite coach in the world? Or are you making your top rate $1,000 an hour because you're going to take 10 clients that you're doing magnificent work with in the world, building something that client believes in, and it sources you to be there fully for them, right? Like there's a difference there. Yeah. So I think it always goes back to the why.
Now going back to your why, I mean, helping people out, being in the same room of people. As you start expanding, building your business, when did you start bringing on other coaches? Because it sounds like other coaches, right? So you're bringing on other coaches. How was that process? Now you're coaching a coach, right? So how did that process work out for you?
Yeah. So for about the last 3 years, what I was noticing is I'd had this conversation we just had with myself, and my rates had gotten pretty high. And I was like, okay, now we're at a capacity question, right? Like there's only a certain amount of hours in the week that I can coach physically one-to-one, and I'm going to tap out. My business model is going to stop there, right? So, and I've been full. I've had, the top number of clients that I want and need has been full for 3 years. So now it's, I think this is a conversation many successful coaches get in at this point is, how do I scale or how do I expand? And that's when you have coaches that start thinking about, well, maybe I'll make an online course, or maybe I will do a retreat, that exists in another country for a couple of weeks and get people to go. So they start thinking of ways to make more money that are outside of the one-to-one model. So I thought, okay, those things don't really resonate with me. So what would resonate with me? And what I got to is I want an agency of really good coaches that not only are getting paid well, top dollar. So we're not doing models that are scaling models, but boutique model that are still servicing clients at a very high level. But we all have a common value system and goal, which is having courageous conversations in rooms, being part of DEIB in our training, in any corporation. So really changing culture from the inside out. And the biggest thing that our company is going to stand for is people getting more support than they've ever had, right? So not only are we going to have a bench of coaches, we're also going to have a bench of practitioners that are, like a sleep consultant or an herbalist or a nutritionist or a Reiki therapist. So there's other modes of healing that we're going to be offering our clients as service to get, again, a higher level of support that would maybe change a culture in a company that has never even thought about bringing those services in, right? So for me, the model expanded when I thought about what I'm committed to in the world and what it would look like to create something to expand that.
Makes sense. Now, what have been kind of some of the struggles in building your brand? And is it more so in finding the clientele, learning the process, building on coach underneath you? was there any kind of struggles that you mostly had to kind of work through?
Oh yeah. Come on. It's not all roses for sure. Gosh, struggles. I think, well, as a high achiever and performer myself, right? Like coming from being a musician where, opera singer is a lot like being an athlete where you have to perform at a level of excellence in the world, which requires discipline and structure. So one of the biggest struggles I've had as I've grown and become a founder now, not even just a coach, has been learning to allow and receive more support than I've ever received. Right. So I'm used to doing everything by myself alone because number one, I can control it that way. Right. But number two, it hasn't been big enough to need anything else. And now we're getting into conversations where I don't necessarily know if I want a board. I don't know if I'm going to need partners in the future. Right. I don't know what equity structures would look like or profit sharing will look like in this model in 3 years. So I'm getting to a place now where I'm actually going to have to allow people to come in and be the gaps that I don't have because we don't always know everything, right? And nobody does. And I'm having to really trust that by letting go of more, we will create more as a team, which is basically what I preach. So, it's practicing all of that. And it's hard. It's not an easy thing to let your baby go and also know that if you fall, it'll be okay. Right. Like, and those are the things I'm practicing daily. And, so that's been one of my biggest struggles. I think the other struggle as a biracial woman, has been leveling up. I've now reached a level, and so has my partner, where neither one of our families has ever lived in the house I'm living in, like the style I'm living in. And that's very confronting to be with, is as you level up, what are the generational traumas or the limiting beliefs that I've had that even I've blown my own family's mind and myself, where it's now like, okay, can you, again, another layer of guilt to shed and remove, right? As you build and you step into things in the world, even though you're giving back, it's still something that you have to look at and tend to. So those are probably the two biggest ones right now.
How has your family, I mean, when you left the opera singing, was your family for it? Were they against it? I mean, when you transitioned to the coach, against it, for it? I mean, how have they been throughout your journey?
Well, it's great because, so first of all, I come from a very, what shall I say, traditional, I don't know if it's really traditional Latin. My father is Latin, my mother is white. And my father is very logical. He's a very logical man, right? So to him, like I can remember being, I don't know, 7 years old, and he took me to the bank and was like, now we're going to open your first checking account and you're going to learn to balance your checkbook, right? Which is all beautiful. You know, he raised a very independent daughter, much to his chagrin though, because the independent daughter quickly left the nest and never came back to New Mexico to live, and I think that for him, it was always like, is this a logical move? Is this a safe move for you? So being an opera singer was like, this is crazy. You should not be an opera singer. And then I went and did that. And he was like, well, okay, she made that work. So same thing. You're going to be a coach? What? I know tons of coaches. They're full of it. I don't want you to be a coach. And here we are, again, where he's like, okay, she's doing okay. Right. And my mom on the opposite side was always the free spirit. So she was always like, let her live, let her do what she wants to do. She needs to fly and figure it out. So I think they were the perfect balance for me to be able to take risks, but also know that I was safe if I fell, So I think they're happy for me is the long way of answering that. But I also think sometimes they're very surprised by the things I try.
Now, if we were talking, let's say in 5 years from now, we're talking down the road, right? I know you have growth and all that kind of stuff. Where would you be? Where would your company be? And let's say 5 years from now.
5 years from now, we would probably, we'd definitely be well-known in circles, like the people to come to actually get the support we're looking at for cultural change. We would be people, like we'd pretty much have a waiting list. And what I mean by that is people would want to be in with us and getting the support that we need. all of my employees and coaches would be making great money and source to then be developing their own businesses as well, which is what's going to happen as we do this agency. I would have kids. I would be working less. I would be giving more and more away of the company so that I can have legacy instead of the building stages that we're in now. And I'd probably be singing more again, honestly, but for fun, all fun.
Do you think you would transition out fully in the future of any kind of coaching and strictly into the singing?
No, I think coaching will always be with me forever. Yeah. I might lean back from the larger business and just be more privatized again in who I work with. But no, I think coaching is here to stay for sure.
I know you already brought it up, once and talked about if you knew some of the stuff you knew today, how you would look at singing in the past. Maybe even go back farther before you even started singing when you're a younger kid. Is there any advice you might give yourself?
Oh, yeah. I think I would say worry less about what other people think, and concentrate more on what makes you happy. Because there was a lot of things that I navigated away from because they weren't the smart thing to do, and I think I would do that more. And I definitely listen to people's opinions less.
I think that's definitely a balancing act of listening to people. I listen to a lot of people and it's in the wrong direction, and I listen to no one, and then now it's a balancing act of trying to listen to the right people. So it's definitely a balancing act. Well, thank you, Elena, for being here. Any last words you want to kind of throw out?
No, just thank you. Thank you for what you're doing in the world and for having us and being such a support to all entrepreneurs everywhere.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that, and thank you again for being here. It's a drastic road. I bet if you talked to your opera singer self a couple years ago about where you are today, you
never would have known.
Laugh it off. So people listening right now, it doesn't matter what you're doing right now. Say yes, maybe not to everything, like Elena learned over time.
The things your heart wants. Yes.
Yeah, say what your heart wants, and be open to the conversation. If you didn't at least talk to your friends, I think it was two different friends or one friend that basically told you about coaching, you probably would never have gone down this path, found that love, and grown this kind of empire that you're building right now.
Exactly.
So thank you again, everyone. Please subscribe, please share, and then find Elena. Her information will be in the show notes.
Thank you so much.